Hi and welcome to this edition of the Property Pod. Today we're joined by Aidan from Grier and Partners. I'm so pleased I got that right because I had to seriously rehearse that prior to this podcast. They're based just inside of Suffolk. Today we're going to be talking about the rush from the city to the countryside in light of COVID-19. Just as I normally do, please can I ask you to like and share, subscribe, depending on what platform you're listening to our Property Podcast channel. We're relatively new in doing this. We've done this for a couple of months now, but we'd really appreciate your support. If you're able to share it, our sort of main focus is to convey property and law information to you in a relatively easy and simplistic way. I hope that that does transpire and you do feel that way too. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Libby, who I'm normally joined by, and she's going to ask the questions.
Fab. So Aidan, tell us about your company, Grier and Partners.
So basically we, as I said, we're a single office based in East Burgold, right kind of between Colchester and Ipswich. And there's only 7 of us in the office. We're a pretty small team, but we do a bit of everything. You know, we kind of do from just straight residential sales, from 100-grand flats to very expensive stuff, which is always very exciting, but kind of same really positive ethos on all of it. We do land and new homes, we do development land procurement, lettings, a little bit of commercial lets. A bit of everything really. We'll try everything, and it's all going pretty well. We're going about 30 years or so now. So.
Wow.
Yeah, it's all good, and we're a pretty experienced kind of team. I'm the youngest, which I'm only 30, so I'm not call myself really young, but and I've been doing it for about 10 years or so. So we kind of we like to think we know what we're doing. So it's all that.
And in like the last few years or since COVID started, what sort of impact do you think COVID-19 has actually had on the property market?
It's really interesting. I think the property market since kind of 2016, really, with Brexit and everything that happened then. That's a whole other subject.
I completely forgot about
Let's not get into that. That's a whole other subject. Since then, it's been a bit of, the market's been a real mixed picture. And basically, COVID has kind of come in just when everything was settling down and added a few kind of loops and twists to the roller coaster that was the market before. But I think, I was having to think about this this morning before I came along. And it's interesting. COVID, while it's kind of taken away so many freedoms from us and like what we can do and where you can go and who you can see, it's given kind of people the opportunity to actually kind of be in their homes and be at home, enforced kind of. You're not actually allowed to go out. But it's made people, I think, reassess what they want from their home. And if their home's giving them that already, fantastic, great. But I think it's made some people realise they want something else from their home, and therefore it's made them think about moving and what they want, and what they want for themselves and their family. And that's why we've seen this kind of pick up recently in people wanting to move. It's just giving people a bit of time to reassess, basically.
We've discussed previously with another guest about the upsurge in home offices and people wanting larger gardens. That's kind of
definitely, I mean, it's really interesting. I suppose home working, it's always been a bit of a factor, but I think it was quite kind of reserved for certain jobs. Marketing was often quite home. People could work from home. Or people, perhaps if you're a CEO or something like that, you can decide you work from home because you're the boss. So offices weren't very common across most of the housing stock. But definitely now we're seeing so many more people put office pods in their gardens, convert their garages.
Some stuff's so cool.
Exactly. And I think some of it's probably from, I've got a child and I can't even imagine trying to sit at home at the kitchen table working while she's running around. It wouldn't happen. So it's something we've definitely seen practically on the ground.
Yeah, definitely.
And what do you sort of think people are looking for when they're moving from like a city or a town to the countryside?
It's an interesting one. I think there's always been this kind of vision of what people want when they come out of the city. There's kind of like a good life. I'm probably too young to know what that is.
Oh, but, I
kind of put that in place. But I think it's really interesting. it's not actually always that matches the reality of why people move out of town. I mean, when we say city, it's always London. 90% of people don't get people move from Manchester down here. It doesn't really work. But more often than not, we find it's actually often driven financially, because property prices in London for a long time have been high and the market there is strong. And we've just found it's people who they want, the desire is actually, we can sell a 2-bedroom flat in wherever in London, Greenwich or something like that, move out to Suffolk or Suffolk Essex borders and use that money to buy a really nice 4 or 5 bedroom house for their family with more space around. So that kind of financial factor has been quite a kind of strong influence for a long time. And obviously, all the kind of, it's easy to commute from Manningtree and Ipswich. The trains are under an hour.
That's what I'm saying. We're just that close enough that it's not too much of an inconvenience, especially if you're now only working, say, 3 days in the office, which is in London.
Definitely.
So moving to Suffolk and Essex actually makes quite viable sense to where we are. It's easy to get to by train now.
And more very friendly.
Yeah, exactly. Farm country people.
We're very welcoming. Yeah, you only have to live in the village 10 years before they'll call you your first name.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah. But what do you think? When do you think is the best time to sort of downsize your home? Is there a right time?
I mean, I think it's interesting. I think when we talk about downsizing and kind of that segment, we kind of get involved quite often early on with people who are thinking about making that decision, and I think it's always a bit of a balance, and it's really different. It's obviously down to the individual, but we often find it's people who are they're not necessarily just looking for a smaller house. They're looking for less of a commitment to their house and less kind of not stress, but just less to do. It's not always they need a smaller house. It's just they want less to do. So in terms of the right time, when we have these conversations with people, I would say just make sure you do the downsize for when you can actually enjoy it. I've seen so many people wait a really long time. They say, we'll do that next year. We'll do it next year. And there are people who I've kind of gone and valued their houses, I don't know, like kind of once a year for 5 years or so, and they put it off and they put it off, and then when they come to do it, they go, really wish we'd done that about 3 or 4 years ago. And so I think
the energy.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the energy to do it and the kind of enthusiasm to do it.
I think downsizing is such an emotional upheaval because you're sort of generally doing it. I mean, I'm approaching that age myself where I'm thinking I want to downsize because my children are grown now. So I'm kind of thinking, do I need the space? But that is ultimately the family home where I raise my children. So for me, it's sort of like, it feels that very. I can see why people would hold off. It does feel like quite a bold step to do. So I can see why that would be sort of a bit of a barrier there.
Yeah, something to put off sometimes.
Yeah. I think also while we're just talking about getting prepared to buy your house, and we're talking about that kind of very early stages, I'm going to do some of my marketing here. We do offer a product called Move Ready. So it basically allows you to get a step ahead of the conveyancing. We get a lot of the conveyancing legal work done prior to you putting the house into market. So it's important your house. You have to make sure your house isn't on the market first. So we then jump ahead of the estate agent, so to speak. But it sort of knocks sort of 3 weeks, maybe possibly a bit more, off your conveyancing time. So if you're wanting to move quite quickly, that's a really good option that Attwells offer. Yeah,
that's a fantastic idea. I mean, it's really interesting. I think one of the factors that pushes people not to move is the stress of moving, and actually people just think, we don't want to go through that. We'll do that another year. There's too much going on this year, and the conveyance is, yes, the marketing the house and us coming and showing people around and getting the house ready for pictures and everything else. That's reasonably stressful, but the very nice people from Attwells calling up and going, have you got that certificate for your conservatory? It was up 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and then they go, I don't really know, to be honest. Getting that out of the way first. That's a really good idea, and it takes a lot of that concern for some people away.
And also as well, because I was like, I wouldn't have these things. I can't remember them. So if you do have that problem and you can't find the documents for your conservatory or for your boiler service or any of those things, you can get something that's called indemnity insurance, which will help cover those elements. So don't be deterred by that. There are products and services we can had around that area. So always just speak to your conveyancer. If you can't find a particular guarantee or certificate that you needed and your buyers are pressing for that, then do speak to your conveyancer about indemnity insurance. It's a great way of being able to sort of mitigate your responsibility and to move on with your conveyancing.
And sort of what are the best property options, do you think, when you're looking to downsize?
I think it's interesting. It really depends. You know, what we find is people, as I'm doubling up, sorry, but it's actually, people often don't want to necessarily downsize the house too much. They just want to downsize the responsibilities, you know, garden, etc. But one thing we've really found recently is there's a move towards new build, and actually downsizers taking on the new build, because again, there's no maintenance to worry about. You've got a 10-year warranty. Yeah, most of the time, you've got a very friendly builder there, ready to help out if something isn't. If you don't know how a system works in the house or something like that. And actually, new builds can be a really good opportunity for someone who's perhaps lived in a beautiful Grade 2 listed house with 10 acres. They can come to a nice 4-bedroom house that's brand new. It's warm. Very low energy bills, and so we find a lot of move towards that, and as well location-wise, again it's kind of something that we always kind of bear in mind is often we have people who actually will only want to move to a certain village, and then within that village they only want to move to within a 5-minute walk of the shops, and then a 5-minute walk of where their children live. So we kind of have these circles, and we go, right, we need to find Mr. and Mrs. Smith a house in this very small area, this size, this price. So again, it's just working with people to find exactly the right house for them, and that's that's where we kind of try and build the relationships up with people that are downsizing and everybody else, but the downsizers definitely, because again, it's more. It can be a bit more emotional for them as well. As you said, lots of memories in their houses, and if they've been there, 30 years or something like that. I think the longest we've had this lady was in a house for 50 years. Yeah, wow. Which is amazing. Oh my she was quite sad to go. That's fair enough. Kind of children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, all been in that house. So,
And what do you think are the advantages to downsizing?
Again, I think it's just simplification of their life. Actually, when people get to a certain age, and I'm not going to say an age because some people want to downsize at 70, someone downsize at 45. Makes perfect sense to me. But I think it's just simplification. And actually, there's a financial side to it as well. Which again is not it's not a main factor, but it's quite interesting. A lot of people have got quite a lot of equity, cash just tied up in their house, and you get to a certain age and think, actually, I fancy going on around the world, maybe not a cruise, that sounds a bit old-fashioned, but something like that. So they think, well, we can sell our house and take a nice chunk of equity out and do something different with it. So that's definitely a factor as well when it comes to downsizing, just releasing some capital.
Yeah. And what do you think are sort of the disadvantages to downsizing, if there are any, in your opinion? I
think the disadvantage only really comes if it's rushed. And everybody's time frame is different. It may some people do it in a very relaxed manner over time, and that's lovely. But actually, sometimes people downsize in a rush because their partner's ill. That can happen and does happen. And I think one of the dangers, especially when people are doing things quickly, is making a wrong decision in terms of what house you buy, and actually jumping at a house and thinking, or bungalow or whatever it is, and thinking, that's perfect for me, let's just move there, because you don't want to have to do it twice. And I think the disadvantage can be doing it too quickly and not making the right decision around which property they go to, really. That's definitely a factor.
And will a downsizer have to pay any stamp duty?
It really depends. It really depends. So if again, obviously, as I'm sure you're all very aware with what's coming up on Wednesday. I'm surprised the phone hasn't gone off with a customer demanding exchange today. Obviously after Wednesday, the relief up to 500 goes completely. So that's going to be a fun day tomorrow. So yes, obviously they will have to pay stamp duty depending on the price, but again, it's the stamp duty. Yes, it's a bit of a pain. No one wants to have to pay more taxes, or you've kind of but they're not, more often than not. If someone's downsizing, they've possibly had their property for 10, 20, 30 years. there's obviously been quite a big capital growth in the value of that property over time, and that often, well, more often than not, completely offsets the stamp duty they pay. So that softens a blow a little bit, but stamp duty, no, it's still never a pleasant thing. Yes, it's tomorrow.
It's been looming for months.
It's tomorrow. So just to sort of point out a couple of things. Firstly, we're recording this just before the stamp duty deadline, so hence why we're all joking about it, because we know what it's been like for the last few weeks or months actually. But it's really started right the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Also, I just wanted to just confirm that it's a phase-out approach to the stamp duty. So, although the stamp duty complete relief does stop, it will be a phase-out. So you will only pay 5% above anything over 250, and you're paying on anything above that. So up to 250s, still no tax to pay, no stamp duty. Above that, you then pay your 5%. So for example, if you were buying a property which was at 350, you would only pay the stamp duty on that 100. Did I say that right? Yeah, 350. Yeah, 100. Yes. See, maths whilst live.
Okay,
it's never works out.
I could not be a lawyer.
No.
I've had to write it all down.
Like scribbling notes.
Last episode we recorded, I was trying to work up percentages live, and that was not going well at all. So just to reiterate, it's a phase out and it's till September. So even if you miss this deadline, don't panic. Yes, you will have to pay a little bit, but it will not be thousands of pounds. It's going to be a marginal, reasonable amount in comparison to the sale of your house. So, yeah.
And when someone's viewing a property and they think about downsizing, is there anything that you think they need to be aware of that some people don't think about when they're viewing properties?
So that's from the seller's point of view in terms of getting their house ready to sell.
No, just like for a downsizer. I mean, if they're looking at a property, think about buying it.
Think about buying it. Okay. Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I think from a downsizer's point of view, I think they quite often when we show someone who's downsizing a property, they instantly look at the dimension of the rooms, and a lot of the comments are, "Oh, this is a bit small. This is a bit too small," and I kind of try and say to them, well, you know, it's all within the context of the kind of overall property, and okay, they may be coming from a 20 by 30 open plan kitchen, dining, living space in their current house. But actually, a smaller version of that's maybe 15 by 12 or something like that. So still a reasonable sized kitchen breakfast room that can still work. They might just have to maybe ditch the kind of 12-person dining table. Let's go for a 6. It'll still work. So it's just kind of actually when you come from a larger house going to a small one, it's the perception of the perception of the space that I always say to the people that are downsizing, just try not to imagine necessarily your furniture in here. Look at how it's presented at the moment, or imagine. Always keep a tape measure in the car, and we can always say, look, okay, this is how big your table is. Let's lay it out on the floor. This is how.
Can I fit my grand piano?
Yeah, exactly.
The living room. Yeah.
We try and move away from the grand piano. So they don't help too much, but it's just that perception. And I'm 6'2", so I'm a great example of how wide a bed is. So I kind of stand against the wall and go, look, this is where your bed would go. Don't worry, this is a king size bed width. This fine. So
it's pretty useful, yeah.
It's very handy,
Balance.
Well, that's about it. So
that's it. No. And what do you think a downsizer consider? Sorry, I can't speak today. What do you think a downsizer should consider when trying to sell their current property?
Yeah, this is a question that, especially when we're doing valuations, one of the main questions people ask us is, what do we need to do to our house to sell it? And I always, 90% of the time, I really try and pull people back from starting to do major works to their house, changing kitchens, changing bathrooms, redecorating everywhere. Because more often than not, the incoming couple, family, whoever it is, be they from local, London, wherever it is, they're going to bring their own ideas and walk into the house and go, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that. And so therefore, from the position of a downsizer, of a vendor, if they spend 20,000 redecorating their house and doing a new bathroom, and someone comes in and rips it out, it's a bit of it doesn't help necessarily. So I always say, or most of the time, just make sure it's clean, tidy, we're all guilty of putting a bit too much on the kitchen side. Let her come in, put it on the kitchen side. I think just get that all nice and clear so people can see the space.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of decluttering. It's my
Paint
least favourite
dry.
word, but it
Yeah.
actually is the right word for the thing. Just get it as clear as possible, but don't do too much work, because most people are buying into kind of the vision of a house and what they can do with it going forward. So, not doing too much is my real advice there. Exactly. Yeah.
And how long will the overall conveyancing process take?
That depends.
General question.
That's a problem. I mean, this year obviously it's been a really interesting time with COVID. People working from home, solicitors working from home, or not, or however. My advice to people at the moment is 8 to 10 weeks is a safe kind of time period. Yes, we've had some go through in 5-6 weeks, which is great. That was remarkable. And we've had some that we're 4 months in and we're still going, and we're nearly there. So, but normally 8 to 10 weeks is pretty good. That gives enough time for people to do it, but be prepared for it to be a bit longer.
Yeah, so I'm very similar when we talk about what Attwells do. It's 8 to 10 weeks typically as well, so that's kind of our standard time for conveyancing. Again, if you are in this position, you can do the move ready and it will speed up the conveyancing. And again, if you're depending on who's buying your house in the chain, normally the downsizer, you'll be at the top end of the chain, which is the amount of people that are buying a house it takes you to move. If for example, which may not be the case, but if you've got a first time buyer, then that chain's going to be relatively small, just going to 2 people in it. So that's always worth finding out how big the chain is as well, because that'll have an effect on your conveyancing. But as I said, typically it's that 8 to 10 weeks. That's currently Attwells sort of time frame as well, so that's good. We match up there.
We didn't talk before this, did we? You told me the numbers to say. Yeah.
So,
I had the email. 8 to 10 weeks, no less.
Same, please. So
that is all from us.
Yeah, it's all. Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes, it was great. Please do like and subscribe, depending on where you're listening to this on what platform. We're going to try and get these out to as many platforms as we can. Spotify is our next aim. So if you're able to, please share as well with your friends. We're hoping to just get as much information out about property and about law as we can in a really simplistic way, just trying to break down the barriers. It's kind of what we do at Attwells. So anyway, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again.